Get out the insurance cards, get out the copays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
What is up and welcome in. We are the One and Done Show. We are your fast break of college basketball information, and we have got a doozy for you tonight. We are here live on a Thursday, a thirsty Thursday, many people are saying, but fret not. We have brought a six-pack, a sixer of our own, a six-topic show covering all of the latest news and notes from around the world of college basketball, including the latest update from everyone that is entering the transfer portal, that is deciding where they are transferring to, and the key players who have made their NBA draft decisions. Some staying, some going. Crazy last couple of days in terms of the news flowing. But the good news is we have the most venomous of men right here in our presence to help us sort it all out. He is MC Holland34 on Twitter. He is the captain of our ship here at Green Screens Media. He is Mr. Mike Holland. Mike, welcome in. Is your head spinning with all this news?
It's spinning, and the text message was hot. Yeah, it's been a lot, man. I mean, the last 48 hours since we did our last show, it feels like an entire chapter of college basketball 2023-2024 season was written. I mean, we had earlier today, I think around 11 o'clock our time here in the Central Time Zone, RayJ Dennis made his decision, choosing Baylor over Illinois. So we'll kind of talk about both sides there a little bit later on. We also had some rumor news-ish that UCONN may be looking to leave the Big East. So that's more of a football deal. But, of course, all programs there would be moving on. So, that's a topic for another time. And then, we're going to have a bunch of topics here that we're going to be talking about. We've got Villanova on the mind, Kentucky, West Coast. I mean, we're going to do it all. It's been right in the middle of our incoming recruiting class series that we've been doing. Finished part 2 the other day. We still have 3 and 4, which is the East Coast talk. That'll be coming to you. I believe our next show is this coming Sunday. But yeah, updating the Dr. Roto Top 300 transfer board. That'll get updated tomorrow, so you can see the latest decisions, where your team's stacking up. Also found a little bit of something on Twitter the other day. Andrew Parrish, man, this guy has been putting in some work. All kinds of just great information all in one spot. Sometimes it's difficult to figure out, who's still at their school, who's in the portal from the smaller schools. And this guy, if you haven't checked it out, you check out his information there on Twitter. I think we can get his Twitter handle to you guys. But yeah, it's a lot of good stuff. And if you're looking for anything from major rosters to mid-major rosters, he has it all lined up. So I've been looking through that. That's great content. And yeah, man, just looking forward. It's June 1st. So looking forward to rocking and rolling through this summer here.
Yeah, absolutely. June is all of a sudden here. They said we sleep in May. I don't feel like I've gotten a whole lot of sleep. I don't feel like things have slowed down very much at all. I want to go back to your last point. Andrew Parrish is absolutely out there in those Twitter streets doing the Lord's work, right? We bemoan all the time how college basketball is not a sport of information. It's a sport of lack of information. And he is out there aggregating some very, very critical data points that are hard to come by and are now, thanks to him, in a singular place. So, Mike, you mentioned we can get his Twitter handle. That is at Andrew Parrish 1, scrolling along the bottom there. So if you have not already, go check out his work. It is stuff that we will absolutely be referencing throughout the offseason. It is stuff that will help inform and shape our DFS strategy as we get into the regular season. So big shout out to Andrew, and big shout out to some of the biggest news regarding the NBA draft decision deadline. That deadline came and went a little less than 24 hours ago, and there are some of the biggest names in the world of college basketball that were waiting until the 11th hour to make that decision, including the last 2 national players of the year. Purdue's Zach Edey's, Kentucky's Oscar Tshiebwe both make their decision there in the 11th hour. Mike, let's kick it off with Zach Edey decides to return home to Purdue for another season. How do you think this all shakes out for the big man?
Yeah, I thought this would happen. Just kind of the way his game, it's more suited for the college game. I mean, he averaged 22 and 13, completely broke out, won the National Player of the Year award, averaged 2 blocks, was a force on offense and defense. And look, this is a great opportunity for him to come back and, just solidify his legacy at the college game, right? Purdue's going to be a contender in the Big Ten once again with him. And then you got to look at the roster that's around him. I mean, one of the things that we were looking at last year was the backcourt was young last year, and now they got a year of experience under their belt. Fletcher Lawyer, he averaged 11 points last year. He's going to be, a year in the offseason. He'll have a year of college basketball under his belt. Same thing with Braden Smith, who averaged nearly 10 points per game. They're going to be sophomores now, and it felt like towards the end of last year, they kind of faded there. So looking for both of these guys to really improve their game and really, really take it the next step, and that's really going to help this Purdue squad, obviously produce a little bit better come March, but they're not really losing much off of a 29-win team. Just a couple of transfers, but mostly everyone's back. So I'm pretty excited, man, to see what he can do. With another complement of 30 minutes per game, and with absolutely all the focus is going to be taking him, trying to slow him down or take him out of the game or find ways. How does he adapt to that? Is he going to be, able to find the open man off these double teams a little bit quicker? And then the team around him, obviously being more experienced, is going to help. So I think the sky's the limit for him. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of play here, right? We'll kind of go piece by piece. I think his draft profile is kind of fringy right now, right? Like there's not a whole lot of space in the NBA for these 7'+, 7'4" in Edey's case, guys that are just kind of plotting rim defenders, right? Like, best case scenario, maybe someone wants to bring him on to play like a Boban role, right? He's got a little bit more touch to his game, but ultimately that's kind of the last remnants of these behemoth NBA big man type of roles. But also, I mean, there are other factors at play, right? Like you mentioned the team around him, by and large, the same cast of characters that helped them earn a 1 seed heading into the tournament last year. Their biggest Achilles heel was the youth in their backcourt. So now those guys are another year older. Maybe they can help make the adjustment when they're trying to cut them off at the inbounds, getting the ball to Edey. But also Edey himself, right? Like he was a huge topic at this last, right? Whether he can make the conditioning gains that he needed to play a full complement of minutes. And he damn sure answered the bell there, right? So if he makes a similar leap in terms of his conditioning and his work in the gym, right? Maybe it's a little bit lighter on his feet. Maybe he can move a little bit faster. I think that those are all things that can help him, buoy his draft stock for next year. But also, they were the 1 seed. They were the 1 seed that fell to Fairleigh Dickinson. I'm sure that's not a great taste in his mouth sitting over the course of the offseason. So definitely feels like, in addition to all those things, in addition to the presumed gigantic NIL bag that he's going to get, feel like Zach Edey and these Boilermakers have a bit of unfinished business that is motivating his decision.
Yeah, I think you made a good point on the modern bigs, right? Like look at the NBA Finals tonight. Bam Adebayo. Now he's not an outside shooter, but I mean he can run the floor. He's a great passer and can finish around the rim. Whereas Jokic is do everything, right? Can shoot the 3. So it's just tough to envision Edey really having a major impact at the next level because we haven't really seen it. So the game's just too fast for a guy of his size, right? So maybe he gets a little bit faster. He carves out kind of a specialist type of role in the NBA, right. But that's not happening if he goes into the draft this year, right? I think coming back to school is his best opportunity to do that. And speaking of coming back to school, before we get to someone who's decided not to return, we've got our guy Samuel the Sniper in the chat. Auburn fans, stand up. Sure, Auburn he's feeling real good about that Johni Broome news from a few nights ago. So he was nervous. There's no doubt he was nervous.
Yeah, certainly. But it was not for nothing, right? We got the news that the Auburn faithful were looking for. Samuel, definitely appreciate you swinging through these live streams. Mike, like I mentioned, Edey decided to return back to Purdue, but somewhat surprisingly, Oscar Tshiebwe decided to stay in the draft. He's going to continue through the process. A guy that, I mean, most people have on the fringe of getting drafted at all this year, right? So, bit of a head scratcher. What do you think about this decision for him to stay in the draft?
This one was weird, man. I thought he would secure a huge bag coming back to Kentucky, especially with the position that they're in right now. Man, I mean, but he averaged 16 points, 14 rebounds, and a block. Another specialist type role. There's not really many guys starting at center in the NBA that are kind of two-dimensional. And he's gonna try to make it. And kudos, right? We've seen it before where we don't think that somebody's particularly going to do well in the NBA, and then they turn out to be really good and change the game. So I don't know if he's that type of player. I don't really know what's going on because Coach Cal on Twitter, I don't know if it was earlier today or yesterday, sent out like this cryptic tweet talking about where, they did everything. They wish him the best, but, there was a potential for him to set the NIL market. And it just, I don't know, man. The whole thing just seemed like it kind of soured. It looked like they were really going after Dickinson really hard in the transfer portal. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, snap, we can't make that happen. Let's just throw the entire bag at Tshiebwe. And it just seemed like it was too late by that time. And I'm a little worried about Kentucky. We'll talk about them a little bit more later on. But, he wasn't the only decision. Chris Livingston stayed in the draft too. Antonio Reeves withdrew, but there's talks that he may be hitting the portal. So they're going to rely on that freshman class that's coming in, and we'll talk about them on one of our two upcoming shows that we'll be doing on the East Coast for the incoming freshman classes. But I'm just really surprised that he passed on that NIL opportunity for the traditional big man that's there in college that Edey's going to get. I don't think his game really translates all that well. So it's just, I'm still in shock that it actually happened. I thought he was one more of the locks to come back to school. I mean, he already has his degree. So, there's always times when people get bad information. I don't know, man. Do you think this is a good decision?
I mean, you say he was a lock to get Edey-sized monster NIL deal. I tend to agree with Coach Cal, which is a rarity in and of itself. I think that his NIL deal would absolutely dwarf Zach Edey's or probably anyone else's out there, right? So, like, another guy that is on the fringe of potentially being drafted, leaving millions of dollars on the table, right? So this one is a bit more puzzling, right? Talking about him as an NBA prospect, I mean, he's an elite rebounder, and there's always going to be a place for that on an NBA court. He's kind of a weird size for today's NBA, right? So, like, might not be the most organic fit, but maybe he's just trying to parlay that, that ability to clean up the glass into, a solid bench role in the NBA. But I get the sense that there's something else in the works here. Like something smells a little fishy, right? Like maybe he's just in his feelings about how hard they went after Hunter Dickinson and he feels disrespected. Maybe things are kind of starting to unravel at Kentucky. I mean, look, there are different forces at work here, but ultimately, logically speaking, it would seem nearly a lock that he would return to Kentucky with all the things that were drawing him there. He decided not to, and I'm not sure we're going to get super clear answers on what went into that decision, right? So might be one of the greater mysteries here in recent college basketball lore. Before we move on to our next topic, I want to hear from you guys in the chat. We see you out here watching. We've already got our guy Samuel the Sniper feeling good about Auburn. We got Jay out here adjusting his call to Nuggets in 5. I think that means that the first game of the NBA Finals has gone final, and the Nuggets sure looked pretty comfortable in that victory. Sweet. So if you've got something on your mind, you want to take a victory lap on your NBA prediction, you want to let us know how you feel about Zach Edey returning. If you want to spin off any conspiracy theories about why Oscar Tshiebwe has decided to stay in the draft, the chat and the comments is the place to do that. Get up in those comments. Let us know what's on your mind. We'll flash that on the screen. We'll keep the conversations going. And also, we're like 3 people away from hitting 500 subscribers. it's almost getting weird at this point. We see tons of you guys watching right now. There are well more than 3 people in here. Hit the button if you haven't already. We are trying to get to this milestone so we can set up the next one. Might even do some fun stuff around it, maybe a little bit of a giveaway or some kind of fun contest here in the near term. But we have more specific matters to get to, and that is topic number 2. Amidst all of these returning players, Trey Alexander and Ryan Kalkbrenner heading back to Omaha, Jay Nakins and AJ Hogarth going to Michigan State, we're looking at a ton of teams that kind of change their outlook for next year, right? We got the Final Four duo, Janelle Davis and Elijah Martin back at Florida Atlantic. So a lot of this deadline decision news has impacted the overall outlook for the top teams heading into the preseason ranking, Mike. So let's jump right in here. Maybe let's start with Creighton, right? Who is it, or rather, where do you have this Creighton team ranked, or how do you think that they profile now that they have some of these key players returning?
I have them as a top 10 team. I actually like them a little bit better than last year, even though they're losing Nembhard and Kaluma. One, I think it puts Baylor Shireman in more usage is always good for Baylor Shireman. Obviously getting Alexander back is huge, but the biggest piece is Ryan Kalkbrenner. Defensively, he's a game changer. So, those 3 guys are going to be the focal point of the offense, right? Now, Nembhard's number 2 on our transfer big board, obviously going to Gonzaga. But I think with that, you get Stephen Ashworth, who, if you haven't seen him play, he's a really good 3-point shooter, very experienced, coming from Utah State, averaged 16 points per game. That's I wouldn't even say he's a backup plan when Nembhard left. I think it's a really good fit for this team. So I'm not going to say they're better without Nembhard, but I don't think they're losing as nearly as much as people think with Ashworth coming in. Kaluma does hurt, but it's kind of seemed like it was a weird fit with those 5 that played 38 minutes a game last year. And I'm interested to see Isaac Trout. We didn't see him last year. He's a top 50 type recruit, redshirted for Virginia. Either him or Mason Miller is going to slot in at that 4 spot. And we'll have to see how that shakes out. Miller's a really good 3-point shooter. Jonathan Lawson is another underrated guy that's coming in. He only averaged 3 points last year, but he shot over 40% from 3. So Creighton creating space, right, for Kalkbrenner inside, who really showed out towards the end of the year offensively. I just think that this team is a top 10 team going into the season. I think Rothstein, he does his little top 45. He has them, I think, 9th. That's about, a lot of people last year had them top 5. Top 10, I think is fair. So what are your thoughts on Creighton? And, would you put the ball in Baylor's hands a little bit more? Or do you think it just needs to be spread out between Kalkbrenner and, Trey Alexander is coming back as well?
Yeah, I think top 10 is fair, right? And I don't want to go as far to say that, we're looking at an addition by subtraction situation. But you look at this roster they rolled out last year, and it was like an all-star team, right? And not only was it incredibly talented, almost all of those guys were super high usage players. And now some of those high usage players are out the door, right? We talk about Nembhard, we talk about Kaluma still being in the portal, and they've replaced them with guys that are a bit more specialized in the way that they can contribute on the floor, right? So I think overall, probably not quite as talented a roster top to bottom, but still very talented and much stronger kind of fit and clearer roles within this offense. And I mean, we talk a lot about the offense. Let's not forget that Kalkbrenner is an absolute beast on the defensive side, right? So not only should we see a little bit more efficiency and a smoother running offense, but they can also shut people down on the other side of the court. So top 10 feels fine. 5 is where the next team we'll talk about is ranked according to Rothstein, and potentially a bit of a stretch here. I mean, I get it. They were a Final Four team, but currently sitting at number 5 in the Rothstein 45, the FAU Owls. Mike, is this a ranking that you can get behind, or is this a little too rich?
Look, I was on the North Carolina train last year, and I still think if Caleb Love had just shot a little bit better, if they just played through Armando Bacot more earlier in the season, they would have made the tournament. That did not happen. Whatever. Everybody's banging the drum that this FAU team, it's split. It's 50-50. You got people that say the FAU run kind of mirrors the North Carolina run. Everything had to go right. I just don't know, man. Like, I just don't feel like this Florida Atlantic team can have all the bounces go their way again. Now, they got great news with John L. Davis and Elijah Martin coming back. So anything is possible. I mean, they're basically bringing the same team back and their coaches back, which is kind of crazy that Dusty May, wants to hang out and, see this thing through. But you thought after that he would probably try to find a way to get out of there and take a high major profile job, but he didn't. He's sticking around. I don't know. It could be a rude awakening. I can't put them in the top 5. Like, look at Conference USA, I believe, was 10th in the KenPom metrics as far as strength of a conference. But come on, man. Like, that's just too high. Like, top 15, okay. But this is almost like a situation where you just do it because they made the Final Four last year, and I get it. They really only lose Michael Forrest. But come on, Eric. Do they deserve a top 5, or are you with me where it's, maybe more of a top 15, top 20? I don't know, man. Maybe I'm being a little too harsh on old Dusty May.
I mean, it's tough, right? Because, like, traditionally, these types of teams are categorized as Cinderellas, right? And they're categorized as such because it is a once-in-a-lifetime type run. And now, by ranking them 5, it's being declared that they should be considered a favorite, if not a legitimate contender, to go back to the Final Four. And that's really hard to do for any team. Yes, I like the fact that they've got almost the entirety of their starting lineup and roster returning, right? We've talked to plenty of coaches this offseason that put that premium on experience and specifically time playing together in the system. So I think it's fair to have them ranked preseason. I probably wouldn't put them ahead of, like, Creighton, who we just talked about, right? Probably wouldn't put them ahead of, more than 10 teams, right? So kind of that 10 to 15 range feels like it makes a lot of sense for me. Maybe the move over to the AAC has something to do with this, right? We're more accustomed to seeing the likes of Houston, getting a bit more national regard out of that conference than we are a team coming out of Conference USA. But, Houston is no longer in that conference. Maybe FAU steps in and becomes, the cream of that crop. It feels like it's going to be probably them and Memphis fighting it out till the very end, which is fitting because up against Memphis in the first round of the tournament last year, if Penny got that timeout, maybe they don't have a Final Four run. And if they don't have that Final Four run, they're certainly not getting ranked number 5 in anyone's preseason poll, right? So
they're not even getting ranked in the top 25.
Yeah, I mean, this feels a little reactionary. It feels like it's a little bit of confirmation bias, but I mean, the core of this team has shown us something, right? So I do think they deserve to be ranked, even if they're not quite as high as number 5. A team that I think there is going to be far more consensus on in terms of their status as a top 5 or better program. Tom Izzo and those Michigan State Spartans posited a few nights ago that on paper, this might be one of his best teams ever, and that ever goes on for a long time. So that is saying something. Mike, tell us a bit about Sparty and why you think Rothstein has them at number 4 overall.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of expected A.J. Hoggard and Jaden Akins to come back, but, this team went to the Sweet 16, and it wasn't a surprise, even though they were a 7 seed. You really only lose Joey Hauser, and that might be okay because defensively he was a liability, even though he could stretch the floor for them. But look, you're going to have Tyson Walker, who we saw what he could do in the tournament. Malik Hall, tons of upside. Sissoko, another year in. He's, your defensive presence. Jackson Kolar should get a lot better over the offseason. And then we just talked about it last show. We did our Mid-America incoming recruiting class breakdown, and Michigan State highlighted that. They're the number 4 high school ranked class coming in for the Sparty. Xavier Booker, he looks epic. I'm excited to see what he can do on the floor. Jeremy Fears, another really, really good player that's going to get some minutes. Cohen Carr is an exciting athlete. Might not quite get his shot until the following year. So, man, you put this team on paper, and it looks really, really good. I know Rothstein has them at 4. When you factor that in, plus Tom Izzo with a ton of talent, and last year we thought he could get it done, and we thought this team was, above average, and he still almost gets them to the Elite Eight. So, the Big Ten's wide open, right? But it feels like at the very top, it's going to be Michigan State and Purdue. And with all this experience and Tom Izzo and kind of what Matt Painter and Purdue have kind of failed to do, losing to a 14, 15, and a 16 seed the last 3 seasons in the first round, I got to say Michigan State's the front runner, and for good reason. They have depth, which is always a bonus. One of these guys goes down with injury, you just slot in the next guy here. Just tons and tons of depth. It's going to be tough to see who starts for this team. I mean, there's going to be some talent sitting on that bench. So, yeah, I think this Michigan State team's for real. I think they're going to deserve a top 5 preseason rank for sure.
Yeah, with that depth, with that talent sitting on the bench watching the starters open the game, also comes versatility, right? If there is a specific matchup that one of their starters is not all that well slated for, you can rotate that man out and get someone in who can play a little bit more to their strength, right? And, I mean, you talk about a guy playing 4D chess. Tom Izzo is going to figure out the way to make the adjustment and to get all of his players in the best position to succeed. So definitely agree with this top 5 ranking. I think Sparty is going to be top 5 just about across the board in terms of preseason rankings. So definitely will be a fun one to watch, and certainly the class of the Big Ten thus far. Speaking of guys coming back and changing the outlook for their teams, Force Ghost Fabio back in these comments. Lamont and LeDee coming back to San Diego State. Run it back, Mike. Another team that was a bit of a surprise in terms of how deep a run they made last year. Real quick, I know we've talked about this to various extents, but Lamont and LeDee back for the Aztecs. Just how impactful of a return do you see these two being?
Very impactful. I think we talked about it last show. These guys need to play, Brian Dutcher's going to play anybody 30 minutes. It would need to be these 2 guys. You lose, Matt Bradley's gone. Shaw Johnson's off to Arizona. Nathan Mensah is not in the middle. Seiko was one of my favorite guys off the bench last year. So you've lost some talent. But, I'm a huge fan of Jaden LeDee. We heard in the offseason that he could be one of the surprise players. In that championship game, struggled a little bit, but I think another year in the system, maybe some more minutes here. Lamont Butler obviously going to go down in Aztec history with that game winner to send them to the championship game. These 2 guys are going to be the cornerstone. Jay Powell hopefully can do some things, transfer from Campbell. That's somebody that Force Ghost Fabio talked about the other day. Hopefully fill in some of those Nathan Mensah minutes. And then Reese Dixon Waters, we haven't really talked about him. A 6-man type guy coming from USC. He's going to be able to help out offensively. And that was a spot where San Diego State, kind of struggled with getting some of that instant offense. So I think Reese Dixon Waters is going to have a pretty big role for them. So excited to see what they're going to do. That Mountain West, man, it's going to be really the West is we talked about the Pac-12 strengthening up. We'll talk about them a little bit later, or actually here in just a minute, honestly. And, there's some really, really good conferences out West this coming year.
Yeah, the West is going to be a ton of fun to follow, including the Mountain West, where, like we were just talking about with Michigan State, seems like there is a pretty clear favorite in terms of preseason ranking. So definitely another fun season in store for us with the Aztecs. Force Ghost Fabio, appreciate your comments. Definitely keep those coming. And if you are checking in with us on YouTube, do your part. Be the one who hits that button to get us to 500. Hit those like and subscribe buttons for us. And like Mike just alluded to, we will stay out west because there are a few more key players who are pack again.
Oh my gosh.
Pac-12 gets a boost with some key players for some top programs. Adem Bona decides to return to UCLA. That answers a lot of questions for Mick Cronin. And Colorado gets Tristan DaSilva back. So, Mike, first question for you. Of these two returning players, which one do you think is the bigger needle mover for their respective program?
Man, it's got to be Bona. Look, like the stats aren't going to jump out at you, but he only played 23 minutes last year, and he averaged 8 points and 5 rebounds. He's going to play 30 minutes this year. It was pretty close to him going to the draft. He was a highly recruited prospect. So he just was playing on a team that had a bunch of returning guys. I mean, Jaime Hawkins, who's no longer there. Tiger Campbell, no longer there. Jalen Clark's no longer there, even though he kind of exploded onto the scene last year. And then one of the guys that was in his own recruiting class, Amari Bailey, was a 5-star and now headed off to the league. Those 4 guys are gone. He is going to be the Lone Ranger coming back as a starter, and I expect him to get a ton of usage. He dealt with some injuries last year, had the old face mask last year at the end of the year. We talked about it about a week ago when we did our West breakdown of incoming transfers and how important this number 14 composite recruiting class was going to be. We thought Sebastian Mack was going to have to really step into that Amari Bailey role. Jan Vide, international player from Slovenia, who's a really good looking player. He's going to have to come up with some big minutes, but there's just not a lot of names that UCLA fans, outside of UCLA are going to know. And so Bona has a chance to make a huge impact. I mean, we're looking at, Dylan Andrews as the leading scorer coming back with 3 points per game. Now, he's super talented, was a very highly recruited player, so you expect that to walk up as he gets opportunity. But, yeah, you feel like, Andrews, Mack, Vide, Bona, Mick Cronin, maybe a top 25 team right on the fringe. So I think this was huge. I don't think they're anywhere near the top 25 when it's all said and done if he doesn't come back. So for me, it's Bona, man. Where are you at?
Yeah, I think that's really the argument for Bona, right? This is a UCLA program that in recent memory has been the class of the Pac-12, and it seemed like they were firmly headed to unranked territory. At least with him returning, I think we can see them make an argument to have a preseason ranking or be very close to it. For me, DaSilva really stands out here, right? This is a Colorado program on the rise. Last year they finished a game over 500 overall, so definitely feels like there's some momentum building. And with the return of DaSilva, I mean, he's bringing 16 points, almost 5 boards, nearly 40% from range, right? So a lot of different ways that he can impact the game. And this Colorado team, they're returning KJ Simpson. He had 16 points of his own. They don't really lose a whole lot of guys in terms of the roster they rolled out there last year. And they're adding in a pretty splashy recruit in Cody Williams, right? 5-star guy, top 10 recruit in the country. Gives Colorado, DaSilva returning at least, gives Colorado a formidable big 3 in a much improved Pac-12, right? We talked about it when we were covering these recruiting classes from out west. This Pac-12 is no longer Arizona and UCLA and everybody else, right? Like, there are going to be a number of teams that are very competitive in this league. And I think Colorado is certainly on that list, and DaSilva has a lot to do with that being the case.
Yeah, I'm with you. Don't forget our guys at USC. They're going to have a little something to say about that. So, yeah, you're right, though, man. The last few years, it's been UCLA, Arizona, USC. Arizona State every now and then, Colorado every now and then, Oregon every now and then. Cal nowhere near, and we feel like Cal's going to be at the top half. 3 teams got in last year, man, with the talent that came back, with the talent that's incoming, with the talent that's transferred in, the Pac-12. Maybe we're being a little overzealous, man, but it feels like it's going to be some really good hoops next year out there. So I'm going to be locked in and seeing if, maybe they can get at least 4 in with this type of talent. So maybe even 5. We'll see how the league plays in the non-con.
Based on how these conferences have been treated, based on how these rosters are looking thus far, if we were looking at a world where the Pac-12 and the Big Ten swapped the number of teams they got in next year, I would be grinning from ear to ear. I think it's going to be a far more competitive league. I think it's going to be an exciting brand of basketball played out west. So definitely keep your eye on the Pac-12 as they get some huge returners in Bona and DaSilva. Topic number 4 of our 6-pack. We've talked a lot about the guys who have decided to return back to school. Talked a little bit about Oscar Tshiebwe staying in the draft off the top. So let's shift gears and continue down that path. There are plenty of talented players that were seemingly on the fence and decided to stick with the NBA draft. You've got Andre Jackson, Chase Audige, Jordan Walsh out of Arkansas, Adam Flagler, Damian Baugh, to name a few, right? So of those 5, Mike, which are the ones that you think are in the best position to maybe, make a splash on draft night and really capitalize on their decision to stay in the draft?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say Andre Jackson, but I feel like UConn's still going to be really, really good. I think the team that got hurt the most here, I'll go with Chase Audige. He's, a guy that's been there, played 4 years. Could have gotten him back as Boo Buie said that he was coming back last month. They had a chance to run that backcourt back. They did some special things for that Northwestern program. Chris Collins has built an epic, squad there. So, him leaving, that's kind of a bummer. And we just talked about how wide open the Big Ten could potentially be again. Now, in place of his decision, they've done a really good job. Ryan Langborg, who was one of the heroes of the Princeton run there, averaged 13 points per game. He's coming in. And then Denver Mullins, freshman year at Denver, averaged almost 10 points per game. So they got some guys that are capable of filling that role. But you just love the kind of the dynamic that Audige and Boo Buie really had cooking last year. I was hoping we could see it one more year. But it feels like, Collins going to do his thing. Langborg, it'll be interesting to see how he kind of transitions to the Big Ten, as well as Denver Mullins. And, Boo Buie, he's going to be up there for, Big Ten Player of the Year. So we expect him to kind of do his thing. When you're at a program like Northwestern, though, I mean, you really need all the talent you can get. So I think this one hurts for me. Of these other 4, man, do you have a guy that sticks out to you?
Yeah, definitely like that Audige call, right? Northwestern was a huge surprise at various times last year, and he had a big part to play in that. For me, I mean, Adam Flagler really jumps out, right? Almost 16 points, 2.5 boards, 4.5 assists per game. Obviously any team is going to miss that type of production going out the door, but this Baylor team, like their 3-headed backcourt was such a big part of their identity overall. And now with Flagler staying in the draft, he's there alongside Keontae George, who stayed in the draft. Cryer stuck his toe in the water and then decided to return to college and transfer over to U of H. So, really the core of this team, their identity through that backcourt are all gone right now in very short order, seemingly in the blink of an eye, since we were talking about their recruiting class a few nights ago. All of a sudden, Coach Drew does it again. He's got great news with RayJ Dennis coming in, the MAC Player of the Year from Toledo. He made that commitment today, and they do have that very strong recruiting class, including 5-star Jacoby Walter coming in. So certainly not hurting for talent in that backcourt, but I would imagine another year with Flagler would be something that the Baylor Bears faithful would love to see. Another thing that we know somebody loves to see is our guy Jay Heinrich loves to see a little bit of shine for his Oregon Ducks, getting that Shallstad boost. Mike, real quick, any thoughts on the Ducks? Are you going to leave that lane to Jay Heinrich, who I should have mentioned off the top? Very clearly not here. Our train is without our conductor. Jay is taking a night off and working his way through those comments tonight. Make sure you give our guy a follow at Dr. William Cannon on Twitter. But Mike, in honor of him will you pick up the torch and stump for the Oregon Ducks?
Man, you're gonna make me do that when he's not here to defend his Ducks. No, we love Shellstad. We love what he can do. They have some other guys coming in too. Kwame Evans, Mookie Cook. This is a really, really good recruiting class. Kario Kendo, if he can, figure out some of that magic from a few years ago, transferring in from Georgia. This team lost a lot though, man. Will Richardson's gone. We loved playing him on Prize Picks there a couple of years ago. Kellogg Ware's out the door. Soros and Guerrier are not going to be there. But you are getting Dante back. Keyshawn Bartholomew. Like, the backcourt is going to be fully loaded for Oregon. So, yeah, another team that's going to battle to, be that fourth or fifth team for sure. So, you like what Shellstad's done, in high school and at the camps and some tournaments around town. Jay talked about that about a week ago. So if you haven't checked that out, go back and rewatch our West incoming freshman recruiting video. We talk about how important he could be for this team. But yeah, it's tough right now. Like, the entire Pac-12 is like transformed. Like, UCLA is going to have like an entirely different roster. Oregon's going to have an entirely different roster. Cal has an entirely different roster. Arizona State has like 7 transfers coming in. Arizona doesn't have Tabelis, Kirk Risa, Courtney Ramey. They have Caleb Love coming in. I mean, we're gonna have to see. It's one thing to talk about it on paper. How does it fit? How do the coaching styles fit these players? Who steps up? It's going to be fun out west.
Yeah, it is. Oregon is added to the long list of teams in the Pac-12 that, if nothing else, have to feel better about their position heading into this season than they did last season. We will see how it all plays out, but keep an eye on those Ducks and keep an eye right here on YouTube. If you have not already, hit those like and subscribe buttons. Do your best, Jay. Do your best, Samuel. Do your best, Fabio. Get up in those comments. Let us know what you think about the guys that are staying in the draft. Let us know what you think about the guys that are returning back to school. These are the key decisions that were made in the last 48 hours or so that are making waves in the world of college basketball. And more of those decisions to come back is our topic number 5, a pile of dudes that pulled their name out here at the last second. Deron Holmes, Tyrin Lawerence, Cliff Omoruyi, Triple J, Josiah Jordan James for Tennessee, Tristan Newton, Anton Watson, and Terrence Shannon, as well as Coleman Hawkins returning to Illinois. Mike, laundry list of guys that have decided to return. I guess kind of sorting your way through here, which one or two kind of stand out to you as the most significant of this lot of returners?
I think Illinois is real significant getting that duo back of Terrence Shannon and Coleman Hawkins. I don't know what they were going to do if they didn't get either one, because it'd kind of be a train wreck there in Illinois. But they get both back. It probably cost them RayJ Dennis, but two's better than one. Talks, and it's Twitter, right? So you never know. It seems like the NIL deal was huge, right? But you get these two guys back in the fold for a team that was solid last year. I mean, I just have major concerns at point guard for Illinois. I saw a funny tweet today where it had Curbelo transferring to Illinois, but I don't know if Illinois fans would think that's very funny at this point. But they need a point guard. I know they got Jeremiah Williams transferring in from Iowa State. He was a Temple transfer last year, but got injured, missed the entire year, and Illinois finished second last year in that transfer for him as far as where he was going to land. And now they get him, but he's going to be coming off injury, and I don't know that he's really equipped to handle a true point guard position. So we'll see. There's still time. There's still names that are out there. But I think anytime you get two guys of this caliber, Terrence Shannon, we know what he can do on both sides of the floor. And then Coleman Hawkins, he's a great passer and can probably do more offensively than kind of what he showed. Those two guys are going to be the foundation of this team. Rutgers needed some good news. They got that with Omoruyi. I mean, this is fresh off of the old Cam Spencer situation where he's kind of spurned them last minute with the old jumping into the portal as a grad transfer after the portal deadline has closed. And Omoruyi, he's one of the best defensive players in college basketball. We're still waiting on Paul McCahey's decision. I don't maybe weighing some other options that are out there. We'll see if they can get him back. You got to feel better about Rutgers, but if not, Morier, I don't know if he's going to be enough. He's obviously a huge piece for them, though. So, we'll see. There's still a lot of time, but I definitely think in the Big Ten, these decisions by Hawkins and Shannon and Morier to Rutgers are huge for that conference.
Yeah, should have those teams primed to finish second or third behind Michigan State, right? But in all seriousness, that Amorie return is massive, right? Like I talked a little bit about Baylor really having their identity tied to that backcourt. Cliff Amorie is the heart and soul, the true identity of that Rutgers team. So him back for another year certainly is a cause for optimism for the Rutgers faithful. I'm going to go with a couple different teams. I'll start off with Vanderbilt, one of my favorite teams to root on down the stretch run over the course of the end of last season. And not that long ago, it was looking kind of sad for my guy, Jerry Stackhouse, right? His was one of those programs that had a massive exodus of players head out the door, and it didn't seem like he was stacking up a whole lot of guys to come in and replace them. But now all of a sudden they get Lawerence back. He was, one of the top guards in the SEC, during the last 2 weeks of the year, was core to that miracle run that we were all rooting for. And, bit by bit, Stack is kind of stacked up a decent little portal class, right? You got Van Allen Lubin coming in from Notre Dame. You got Tesos Camateros coming in from South Dakota. Evan Taylor from Lehigh, right? Like these are all guys that, aren't going to be the huge headliners overall, but still solid guys, all guys that are on your top 300 over at drroto.com. And one thing that we learned during that miracle run, I mean, Stack is going to get the most out of these players. So definitely feels like a little bit of smoother sailing is ahead for Vanderbilt than it felt, even a week or two ago. And the other team I want to hit on here, UConn, right? We mentioned it off the top. They lost Andre Jackson, who decided to stay in the NBA draft, as did Adama Sanogo. So now getting Newton back is massive, right? They are obviously coming off that national title run, so it's not uncommon for them to lose a player here or there. So retaining Newton is big for them, and they have that huge recruiting class coming in, number 3 overall. So, this program, this team is going to look a little bit different than the one that ultimately cut down the nets last year, but they're in good hands, with guys like Newton returning, with this top 3 class coming in. So still plenty of reason to be optimistic for the UConn Huskies. Mike, our last topic here. We promised you a six-pack on this thirsty Thursday. Let's close by hitting some quick hitters, right? I feel like we've touched a lot of different pieces of news. There are a few things that don't fit super cleanly into those categories that we ran down. So almost kind of rapid fire style. What are the other pieces of news that you think are noteworthy from the last day or two?
Well, the decision of Ron Holland choosing the G League over Arkansas. He decommitted from Texas, and there was some talk that Texas could be in it, but not really. And it was a decision between G League and Arkansas, but this kind of continues a trend. I mean, every year we're going to see it. We're going to see the G League grab a couple of these top high school players, and sometimes these NIL offers, they're not always delivered on. So, a guy can actually get a contract offer that he can sign, knows what he's bringing in. We've seen a lot of that where coaches are promising players X amount, and then it's nowhere near that. So if we get the NCAA to kind of get in here and set some guidelines and some type of standard of, NIL, maybe some of that stuff wouldn't happen. But your thoughts on, I guess he's from Duncanville. My entire family's in that Duncanville area, or from the Duncanville area up in Dallas, Texas. So no relation to Ron Holland, but he's got the same last name here. But any thoughts on him?
Man, I mean, look, if you got family out there, you got the same last name, you might as well call him a cuzzo.
right,
and then call him up and figure out what went into this decision, right? Because like the undercurrent when he decommitted from Texas to go to Arkansas was allegedly money, which makes little sense because arguably Texas could pay him exponentially more than anybody, including Arkansas, right? And now, in theory, he's taking even less money to go to the G League, right? So I think the thread to pull on is the one that you mentioned. The unfortunate reality is we're already starting to see some horror stories of kids being promised a bag and then that bag never shows up, or it's a much smaller bag than what was discussed, right? So while this is unregulated, these things are going to happen. So I can't really blame the kid for just going and getting the sure thing, punching his ticket, starting his professional career, right? This is a guy that we're probably going to be talking about for NBA draft prospect purposes in the not too distant future. So don't blame him at all for taking the sure thing and going to the ranks of the professionals. The next topic I want to hear, Tyler Burton, the Richmond transfer, committed to Villanova. Villanova, a program that was a little bit quiet through most of the offseason, and now feels like they've got some momentum building. So, Mike, for you, do you think this commitment by itself is enough to put Villanova back into that tournament conversation?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think I mean this guy's a baller. We talked about him a few weeks ago, or a little over a week ago, when he jumped in. He's a top 20 guy in the country in the transfer portal. I think that highly of him. Averaged 19 and 7 on a team that was okay the year before. You know, really shined with that squad that was an older team that pulled the upset over Iowa. So we kind of talked about that, but I think this makes them a challenger for the Big East. I mean, Kyle Neptune, man, has done a great job this offseason. He went out and got TJ Bamba, who's a really good scorer from Washington State. Hakeem Hart's kind of a do-it-all guy from Maryland. And then Mark Armstrong is going to be a sophomore this year and probably going to take a significant leap forward. We know that Cam Whitmore's out the door. Obviously, he was an NBA-ready player. But Mark Armstrong was that other 5-star from that class a year ago, and I just feel like he's going to take a significant step forward and be a very good player for them. So, yeah, I think they're in, man. What about you?
I want to say that they're in, but I mean we like to brag on the Big 12 as the toughest conference in the land, and I mean maybe we're not quite up to that point, but this is a much improved Big East that Villanova is going to have to navigate through. Coach Kyle Neptune heading into year 2 is not something to undermine, right? Like having a year of experience under his belt is certainly something that will play to his advantage. And, he had his struggles at times, but he did a pretty solid job this offseason. Also, for a lot of that season last year, he was dealing with guys that were injured or returning from injury. And, yet again, we're looking at a pretty strong Wildcat roster. And I think that, we're certainly trending in the right direction for them to be in the tournament conversation, if not firmly in by the time we get to Selection Sunday. Mike, before we get out of here, I want you to pick just one storyline that is still sitting out there in the world of college basketball this offseason that you are most looking forward to. Is it fair? There's so much going on. Should I really just say one? Give me a storyline. If you want to sneak in another one or two, I won't be mad at you.
I think the biggest one
What are you
is
looking forward to covering for the rest of the offseason?
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to see what Kentucky's roster looks like. If they're just going to go 5-5 style, they need some guys. They need some dudes. This freshman class is super talented, but you need a few more pieces here. Michigan, same situation. How are they going to bounce back from the whole Kevin Love? Kevin Love's playing in the finals right now. Caleb Love. And then, Illinois point guard, man. Those are the things I'm looking for. And we'll see. There's just some major programs with some question marks still. So I'm looking forward to see how that gets addressed. What are your thoughts, man? Give me a thought or two.
Man, I mean, we've talked about it a few times. It's actually been a while since we went all in on the portal, but 90% of your big board still has a home for next season. But I mean, in that 10%, there are some absolute game changers out there, right? Plenty of guys still in the top 25, Arthur Kaluma, Grant Nelson, Cam Spencer, right? So definitely looking forward to getting a clearer picture of where those guys are going to head for the upcoming season and how that changes the landscape for that team, for the conference that they're moving into, assuming they move conference. So not quite as fast and furious on the portal front, but there are still some heavy hitters that are going to make an enormous impact that we will certainly get you all the details on. Mike, get us on out of here. Tell us what you think about these decisions that were made, the guys that are staying, the guys that are going. If you have any macro thoughts about what the state of college basketball is and how guys are thinking about the draft and the NIL and player mobility age, put a bow on this one with all of these recent draft decisions.
Yeah, it's a lot to wrap your head around. Head still spinning, but these are decisions that we're going to look back and it's gonna make or break some teams. It's just really going to tell the tale for next year. I mean, obviously still have to play the games and injuries and things like that, but these decisions that are being made as of May 31st have a massive impact. And I'm just excited to see how the transfer portal finishes up. I'm excited to see these teams take, their little summer trips that they do. I think there's something like 87 teams that are taking foreign trips this year. So it's crazy the amount of money in college basketball, right? The players should be able to get a little bit of a piece of that pie, which it looks like they are. And it was funny. I was looking last night doing some research on NIL deals, and it's like these players are, going out there waiting until the last minute to have these bags thrown at them. So hopefully they're securing all of it, if not most of it. But I'm excited to continue on our incoming recruiting class series, part 3, coming up on Sunday. So looking forward to that, my guy.
Absolutely. We will kick off our East Coast swing on Sunday. There are so many programs out east. We're going to break that up into 2 parts. We're going to continue our coaching conversations, and we're going to continue covering all the ins and outs of college basketball over the course of this entire offseason. If you are not already, if you're checking in on YouTube, do your part in the Green Screens Media universe. Hit that subscribe button. We are painfully close to 500. And then go over to Twitter. Follow the captain of our ship, MC Holland 34 on Twitter. Show our guy, the conductor of the Green Screens Media train, Jay Heinrich, at Dr. William Cannon, some love. And while you're there, check out our handles, One and Done CBB and at Get Green Screens for all of the latest information that we're pushing out there. And if that is not enough, the last thing you need to do, you need to get over to drroto.com. You need to check out Mike's big board. 300 players ranked, all of them that entered the transfer portal this season. Still some information to catch up on there. So make sure you are checking out that information over at drroto.com and make sure you get this bread.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drroto.com. And until the next visit, be well and take care.